Hi there. In this screencast, we'll take a quick look at PHP. In last week's example, we had some JavaScript that got some information from a form and then displayed it back to the user. We'll create exactly the same thing, but with PHP this time. So again, I've already created an account on a web host. I'm just copying and pasting the URL. I've changed my password since my last screencast because I don't want other people breaking into my account other than my students. Students, you feel free to break into it if you like, but you'll have to request a password from me. So there's my URL that 000 web host gave to me based on the name I chose for my website. And that's what we have so far. We have an HTML document called index.html sitting under public_HTML, that directory. So that's why it displays that piece of text. Now, I'm going to log into the web host and I'm going to make this a PHP file instead of an HTML file. So I'm just going to leave this up. I want to move that one over. And I'll go to 000 web host. And I'll sign in. Just takes a moment. And I'll enter my new password. And I'll go to my manage website. Again, that opens up my control panel. And I'll go to Tools, File Manager, and Upload Files. That opens up the File Manager. So again, I'm just using the tools that I'm given on my host as, again, a kind of an ad hoc integrated development environment, which in effect it is. And I'll click on public_HTML. Everything that you place in there will be available for the web. If you have any folders outside of that, they will not be available. Now, I'm just going to quickly rename this file to index.php. So in order to use PHP, the files need to be called PHP. So I'll select that. I'll use my little rename, and I'm going to change that to PHP. So if you've already been using a lot of HTML, you can go through all of your HTML files and rename them to PHP, and then they're all set up to actually use PHP, and it doesn't affect anything else. So I'll choose rename. So now, when I go back to my website here, and I refresh, even though I renamed that index from HTML to PHP, it still works exactly the same. So now let's just quickly add some PHP. So I'm going to choose that and I'll edit it. And just so we can get a little bit of a intro to PHP, what I'm going to do is add some PHP. So the way you add PHP is just directly to the HTML document, or HTML code I should say. It's a PHP document. And you use a bracket just like in HTML, and then we just use a question mark. That starts PHP, and then enter PHP. And then we do the same thing to close that. Question mark, close. So there's your PHP script there. Now, I'm just going to print something or write something to this document. This was very similar to what we said in JavaScript. We said document.getElement by ID and inner HTML. All we have to say for use for PHP is echo. And I'm going to say hello world. And then we terminate the line just like we do with JavaScript with a semicolon. So you can think of that as a period in English. So I'm just going to save and refresh. So save. And I'll go back to my website and I'll refresh. Hello world. Oh, I accidentally put it before my H1, so I'll just go back and change that. I think we can actually just drag in these editors. Yeah, look at that. It's a little better than brackets in that regard. And save and refresh. Now, that's some very, very simple PHP. Now, what I want to do is create a form in my index to get some information, and that word get is comes up. I'm going to say, instead of get, I'm going to say to post some information to another document. So in order to do that, we need to quickly add a form. And this form looks pretty much like the form that we created last week with JavaScript, except there's a couple of differences. So first of all, we just used form. Now, we haven't seen this, but this attribute action specifies the file that'll process this form. So I'm going to create a new file later on called welcome.php. It doesn't quite exist yet. And then another attribute we haven't seen is a method. We have two methods available, get and post. We want to use post for security reasons. And you can read about various form actions. You can Google that. I'm just going to keep it simple and just always use post for security reasons. Now, in our previous form we had labels. I'm just going to keep it simple and just type in name and then input. The type for this is text, just like we saw before. And I'm going to add an ID just like we had before. I'll call this field name. But I'm also going to add a name attribute. This is for PHP. ID works with JavaScript, name works with PHP. And I'll throw in a line break and do the same thing. I'll just copy and paste this for email. So copy and paste works in this editor just fine as well. And I'll say email. Text, we can actually use email there. But I'll say email and email. So we've got the two pieces of information where we want to collect from our user. Now this thing we haven't seen before. This is a submit button. We created our own button from scratch for JavaScript, and then it called a function. This does effectively the same thing, but it's already got a built-in function for it. And what the function is it grabs all of this information and sends it via post to welcome.php. Don't worry if that makes any sense at all. So let's take a look at what we have so far. I'm just going to double check I'm good. My syntax looks excellent. And notice that this is not PHP, this is just all HTML. We'll have the PHP in a second document called welcome.php. So I'm going to quickly save that and double check that this half of it works. Let's refresh that. And when I submit, it's looking for welcome.php, which we haven't created yet. That's a cute little mouse over there. So let's go back to that. I'll refresh it. And back here in the file manager, I'm done with this document. It works so far. I just need to create that welcome.php and the PHP within it to post this information to welcome.php. So I'm done with that. I'll save and close. And I'll create a new document. I'll call it welcome.php and create and edit. And it's HTML. I'll throw a head on there, just because I always do, and a title, and in the body I'll have some PHP. So I'm just first of all going to say welcome, give it a human readable welcome, and make it happy. And now we add our PHP. So again, it's PHP, not HPH, but PHP. And that's basically our PHP there. And then we actually add the code to post the information from the form to welcome.php. And I'm just going to say hello space, and then the name is going to go here. So that is just echo. Again, echo means print to this document, and then it's $_post. That's not something you have to remember, but this is how it's getting the next thing from the form. And then in square brackets, and I'm going to terminate the statement so I don't forget. Now inside of quotes, we just grab that form element. So our first one was called name. So I'm just going to type in name. And that was, again, name equals name. The attribute was name. For this purposes, you need to use name, not ID, like we did for JavaScript. And then I'm going to throw in a break. And then I'll just copy and paste all of that and do it again, but for email. So I'll say your email is, and instead of name, I'll just say email. And again, the way we spelt it back in index.php was email without any punctuation. So that we should be good to go with that code. I'll quickly save, go back to and I'll add my information. So now it's passed via post that information from that form to welcome.php. So again, this example is not much more remarkable than what we saw in JavaScript. The JavaScript version may have been a little bit more elegant, depending on how you feel. However, we saw basically using another programming language. And just like JavaScript, we can add the PHP code amongst our HTML code, but the difference is it's in a PHP document. So next, we'll grab the data from that form, and we'll use that same welcome processor, but it'll grab that information, put it into a database, and then pull it out of the database in the welcome.php. Now the benefit of that is that the user doesn't have to enter it every single time. We have the information on our website. It's our data now. It's not on their workstation. It's not in a browser session. And so we can display it back to them anytime we like, and we have that information to use if we need to contact them or what have you. So I'll show you that in the next screencast. We'll work with our database. We'll create some SQL statements to work with the information from the form. Thanks so much for watching.